What I want to do tonight, guys, is I was praying about how to go about this, and I just kept having it on my spirit. The reality of it's not time for me to speak, it's not time for me to teach. That right now I need to sit down and be quiet. And with the moment of what's going on in our country, we're at a significant moment in our nation. And I've been talking for quite a while about the awakening that's coming. Those of you that have been around here for a while, I've been talking for several years that there's an awakening coming. And I've thrown out several characteristics of the awakening that are coming that I know God's shown me. One of them is going to be an awakening of compassion. The first awakening was an awakening of faith. The second awakening was an awakening of hope. This third awakening is going to be an awakening of love, and it's going to be an overflow of compassion. So that's what we need to be releasing in this moment. We need to be cooperating with God and releasing compassion. Okay, it's going to be an awakening of community, and that's part of what God's trying to do right now in the middle of this moment. He's trying to maximize the moment, and it's going to be an awakening of community. And so he's trying to tear down barriers to that community so he can build the community that he's going to bring. The third thing I've said about the awakening, it's going to be compassion, it's going to be community, but it's going to be an awakening that comes in the middle of crisis. We're going to have unfolding crisis. We're going to have a rolling crisis where different crises pop up one after another. And in response to the crisis, we're going to have a response from God of awakening. And every time, and by the way, remember this for the future, guys, every time we have a crisis moment, God's got an answer with awakening. He's going to respond with awakening. He's got an answer. And so in this crisis, what you see rising up under the surface from God's people is an awakening moment where they're waking up to what God wants to do in the middle of a crisis moment, okay? He's going to bring awakening, whether we have an economic crisis, political crisis, various crises that go on. And there will be other issues in the future. And when the next issue comes up, we will talk directly to it. We will speak to it, we will address it, and we'll talk about it. Right now, the issue that God has brought to the forefront is race. The crisis at hand is race. That's the issue of our day in this moment and in this time. We're in a moment of convergence, and it's incumbent upon us as the people in everyone's big picture sphere in the world and in our world, in our sphere where we're at, he wants us to speak and talk about the issue that's at hand. And so I felt that I needed to be quiet, and we need to listen. Okay, as a white audience, as white people right now, we need to listen to people of color. We need to listen to what they have to say, because Martin Luther King said, I believe it was in his To America speech, that he said something along the lines of riots or protests are the language of the unheard. So the solution to that is if the reason protests develop and the reason that we see this happening is because they feel unheard, part of the solution is let them speak, be quiet, and let them talk and let them be heard. And so right now we need to hear some things and listen. And in the middle of this moment, guys, one of my highest core values is that relationship is more important than agreement. Okay? Mine and Dion's relationship is far more important than mine and Dion's agreement. We don't agree on everything. We don't even agree on, whether or not the Marvel movies are good. Those Marvel movies are terrible. Those superhero movies, they're not good. And so Dion loves those. I love Notting Hill. Dion thinks that it's a man card violation. So don't you?
Absolutely.
So it's just a thing. It's just different strokes for different folks. So, but in the middle of it all, we need to hear. So I'm not asking you to agree with what we say, the things that are shared. I'm asking you to listen. Okay? So as we share these things, be open. So where are we in our country? And then I'll share with you a quick story. Our country has a bad marriage. Let me say it to you that way very directly. Right now in our country, we have a bad marriage relationship. Okay, we have two groups, two total peoples. We're a very divided nation. And if you've ever been in a rough relationship, you know what that's like, to have two people who don't get along at all. And we have two different groups who do not see things at all the same way. Their perspectives are different. And it's necessary, I've heard Gary say this many times, it's necessary for each person to walk over to the other side of the room and see it from the other person's point of view. And we're in a moment where we need to be still and listen and hear the other point of view, the point of view of the people who feel unheard. So let's listen in this moment and in this hour to what's going on, because as a country, we have to decide, are we going to fix our marriage or are we going to get a divorce? Folks, that's really where we are. Are we going to fix our marriage, or are we going to get a divorce? Because what happens in a lot of couples, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I will, because, you know, that's how we roll. The reality is, in a lot of marriage situations that I've seen through 30 years of doing this, or however long this has been, what happens is they just learn to be silent to keep peace, keep silent to keep the peace. So you're not fighting because you're not talking, but at least there's a peace. So we've had a peace. The only time we have peace in this country is when we don't say anything, because we just don't bring up the stuff. So we keep quiet to keep peace. It goes on in homes, but it goes on in our country. So we have to decide. You agree with that?
Absolutely, I do.
So we have to decide whether we're going to do the work as a couple in the United States of America, as two groups. Are we going to do the work to sit into spiritual counseling with God and talk through the hard issues? Are we going to sit there? Are we going to go through it? Are we going to talk about it? And so that's what we're going to endeavor to do tonight, and endeavor to do this. We're going to do the hard work and take the time to walk through some stuff. And what will happen is we will come out of it not in agreement, because I can tell you, Dion and Osh don't agree on everything, do you?
No.
And just like in any situation, we're not going to agree on everything, but we're going to listen, but we're going to do the hard work. Okay. I want to tell you a story, and then I'm just going to ask Dion some questions. I want to hear from Dion tonight, because I feel like God told me just be still and be quiet. Okay. And let's hear from the people who feel unheard about things that I've known him and I'm close to him. Okay. Let me set this up with Dion. Dion and I are friends. Okay. We're close. When my mother died, I called Dion, come talk to me. You remember that?
I do.
And we're sitting on my back porch, and he's talked to me about my mom. I know that this guy doesn't like feet. So don't wear flip-flops around Dion, or he will lose it. He doesn't like feet. Matter of fact, when Cameron wants to get under his skin, he says, we're going to do a foot washing ceremony. We almost were teasing Dion that when he first joined us, came around, the way we were initiated here, Dion, is we have a foot washing ceremony. And I thought we were going to lose him that day. Of course, we were joking. We haven't ever done that. But we were teasing him. He knows enough about me to know that I do love Notting Hill. It's one of my favorite movies, and I take a lot of heat about that regularly. But we know each other. I know he doesn't like snakes. We both know we don't like coffee. Amen. That's a white guy high five. We both don't like coffee, because we're saved. For all you people that like coffee, I mean, give us a break. There's a lot of similarities about us, but we know each other. This is not something we're just sitting up here and doing. When I'm having a hard time, I will say, man, Dion, I'm struggling. And when he's having a hard time, he'll say, Rick, I'm struggling. And we're friends. And so I want you to understand, this is two people who know each other. So I hope we're going to get a lot closer through the years, but we know each other. I trust him. Okay. I trust who he is. And if you know him, you can trust him too. I think he trusts me. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think he trusts me. And so we're friends that are going to talk. And having said that, I'm going to set him up with some questions, and they're not going to be easy questions. Okay. I'm going to throw out topics that'll be difficult. We're going to talk about things that are the big issues of our day, in our group. They're not issues in our group. They're the issues of our day, but we're going to talk about them in our group so that we can truly become close and not be a married couple that's divided, but one that's unified and has community. So I've always had a heart for this reconciliation. I've been a part of reconciliation movements in the past, whether it's the church reconciling or racial reconciliation or whatever. I've always had a heart to do that and a desire for that, and been involved in different things on spiritual or social levels. So I've always thought that way, but years ago, and I asked Osh if I could share this story, and you'll hear me share it again if I teach on this topic. I went to court with her family the day I was in the court several times through the ordeal when her sister Tara got sentenced and sent for her sentence. And I remember being there that day, and when the verdict was read, I was the only white guy, and I was asking her before this started, I'm going to say 30, 35, 40 people there that were black, and I was the only white guy there. I was the pastor of Phyllis and Osh and them in that day. And so we were in the courtroom when the verdict came in. And when the verdict came in, they brought several police officers to guard the door. And several people came in, higher ups, and sat in the seats, and several police. And I looked over there and I went, well, why did they come in to guard the door? Because the thought that went through my mind, did they think there's going to be a problem? One of Osh's family members came up to me, and I remember him being a heavy set guy. And that's a politically correct way of saying he was heavy set. And he came up to me And he said, because I think he came up to me, frankly, because I was the representative white guy of the group that was there, and I was a minister or whatever. And he just asked me, he said, did they think there's going to be a problem? And I said, man, I was kind of embarrassed. I didn't know what to say. And so I said, if I'm honest, I said, I think that's what they're thinking, is that I didn't know if they thought they were going to cause a problem with the jury, or they thought they were just going to, I don't know what they actually thought, but that's what I felt. And I think that's what was there. In that moment, guys, though I always had a heart for reconciliation, and I've told this story several times, it left a mark on me in that moment of, wow, that felt way different than it would have if I were in here with an all-white family. That's my opinion, and I was there, and it was the thing that got left in my heart and in my soul. You would agree with that, wouldn't you? Ash is in here with us tonight. She's nodding over there if you can't see her. To me, it was clear. And I'm just telling you that there's no way for a white person to experience that unless you're like the only white person in a group of black people, and suddenly you see that go down and you're like, huh. And it hits you in a way that changed me. Even though I already had a heart for reconciliation, I would have thought, I don't know about that. And it hit me that day, and it left a mark on me. So as this goes on, and as we share these things, I want to set him up, and I want you to be open to hear just him share the experiences of life, okay? Because I trust him and I know him. So we have two groups in America that we need to make one. And my whole theme tonight is I want the two to become one, okay? We have to somehow in our country get the divide. We have to end the divide, and the two, whether it's a married couple or our nation, we have to get the two to become one, and right now they're not. So we have to become a both-and country, not an either-or country. So I'm going to talk about the two different groups in a lot of different areas, and then I just want you to listen. I'm going to set Dion up. So Dion, Are you ready?
I am.
Talk about what it's like. I want to talk about the two experiences of America. Yeah. What goes on in our nation, what it's like, the difference between what it's like to have a person who's white. I'm going to say white and black. Dion and I don't have a problem with it, so y'all don't either. Yeah. Okay. What is the difference when you hear people throw around terms like white privilege and systemic racism? Mm-hmm. And so I'm sitting here and our family never had anything. Okay, we were raised, my dad drove a bread truck for Rainbow and Wonder Bread, and I would get up at 3 and 4 in the morning sometimes and go with him. We never had a lot economically, so I'm one of those people that would sit here and go, how did I have any white privilege? I never had anything. I had XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. So Dion, explain to a guy like me, how did I have white privilege, and what does that mean? What is the difference in your experience versus my experience?
In my experience, the difference is that you get the reasonable doubt that when something happens or there's a suspicion that something could happen, I'm first looked at as a threat. You are not. I'm first looked at as a person that may not be completely honest. You are. I am somebody that is less likely to be trusted in that situation as opposed to you. And that is something that I think, and I don't say this to make anyone feel sorry for me or anything like that. I say it because it is like I have a big red nose, a big red ball on my nose. And everywhere I go, they are looking for the guy with the big red nose. I don't ever feel like I can go to any place and feel like someone isn't watching me for fear that I'm going to do something that may bring harm to the people around me. And that is, it's just that the assumption is that I'm guilty in virtually every situation. And the degree to which I feel that varies from day to day, but that to me is the difference. That to me is what that means. That no matter the situation, if something bad happens and there's a choice between did Dion do it or did Rick do it, most people are going to believe that I did it. And that's the way I see it. That's the way it feels.
Have there been incidents in your life where you felt that?
Absolutely. I can remember I remember in high school, we anybody that's played sports or anybody that's been a part of sports, you know that from time to time something will get stolen in the locker room, and I can remember at a very early age something got stolen in the locker room, and a lot of guys didn't even have to go in the principal's office to answer questions about that. In fact, virtually nobody.
And you were in
did.
a pretty predominantly white school.
Yes, yeah.
That.
I went to Long Grove, and in my class, I seems like I remember it's around 100 people. There were 4 black people in that class, and there were 4 black guys, basically. And I remember that happening, and I remember feeling like anybody who knows me knows that we didn't have a lot of money. And so I've still got the same raggedy shoes on today that I had yesterday. So if I stole them, I probably would be wearing them, or at least you could find them on my person. And I remember just, I didn't want to go to school the next day. And I made up that it was a stomach ache and that, and I didn't feel well, but it wounded me, because the one thing that in my house we never did was we were taught early on, you don't ever get in trouble at school, you don't steal, you don't fight, you don't do anything at school that would bring dishonor to your family or whatever, that would reflect poorly on your family. And I can remember that, and I even talked to some of the guys that I considered friends at the time. I said, hey, did you get called in the office? And they're like, no. And I knew then that it was different, that situation was different for me. My experience was going to be different. And
how did that make you feel?
That, well, like I was a target, and that I was, that morally there was something wrong with me and people that look like me. It took me down to that level. And I remember in middle school, you're confused about everything anyway. but
that's not just a white problem?
That is not. It's not. But it really kind of made me something that I really never was, and that's defensive. I always felt like I had to prove that I was doing the right thing. You had to see me do the right thing. I want you to see me not copying. I want you on a test. I want you to see me if there's a commotion. I'm not fighting. I'm not cussing. I'm not part of the problem. I wanted you to see me so you didn't get it, because if you don't see me, then I'm going to be guilty. If you don't see me not doing the thing that someone's going to be accused of, then I'm going to be guilty. And that lesson stuck with me. It early on, middle school, I was 10, 11 years old. That stuck with me. And I had to be above board in most things. And I have to make sure that if something goes badly, you know that Dion didn't do it. And that's how it moved me. That's how it affected me. And white privileges, in my opinion, you don't have to prove that. You get to just be who you are.
You don't have the extra hanging.
Right. You don't have this. You don't have the gorilla on your shoulders constantly. It was always important for me, and I because I wanted my family. I didn't want people to think that I was one of the bad Stevensons, because there are people in my family who made poor decisions. My father being one of them. So early on, the people who knew me, I didn't want to be that black guy. No, I didn't want to be the black guy that you had to worry about. And not only that, but I wanted you to be able to see that not every black guy you meet is is doing things that they're not supposed to, and taking a path that would lead to destruction and jail. I didn't want to be that guy. So every day, in every way, I tried to make sure that I did things in front of people. I'm going to hold the door open for this teacher, so you can see me holding the door open for this teacher. I'm going to be in the library studying, so you can see me in the library studying. And everything, and I want, and not that I wouldn't have done those things anyway, because it's who I am and what I believe, and I wanted to succeed, and I wanted to achieve, and I wanted to be smart, and I wanted to do all those things because that's just who I am. But it's also important that you see me do it, so that maybe you won't think that maybe somehow that disarms you. And not only does that disarm you, but that gives the next guy, or my brother, or somebody else, or my younger sister, that gives you the opportunity to just let them be who they are. For it to just be okay for them to be who they are. And they don't have to prove that they're good. They don't have to prove that they're just like every other kid. They get to just be a kid. And that is something that was something that I wanted to do because it was important to me.
Let me ask you a question. When I think about this topic, I think one difference in years of being in ministry and having people of all races that I've ministered to, the one story I consistently hear, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that is a different experience for a black family kids growing up than a white. Almost all black families that I know have had the talk with their children about how to behave if they encounter the police. What percentage, do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And what percentage of black families would you say have had that talk? And I hate to ask this personally, have you guys had that?
I've had conversations.
Because we're here in Ardmore, Oklahoma, America. Yeah. Both of us are basketball coaches, by the way. We were, and all that. So, we're just guys.
I had those conversations numerous times on the way to school with my kids.
What would you say to a white guy who says, "Well, you don't need to"?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Why?
Because unfortunately, it can be a matter of your life. You don't get to come home if you have a misstep in some of those things and some of those procedures. I remember telling Braden all the time, I was like, listen, you can't be the loud guy. You can't be the guy that draws too much attention to yourself. You can't be the guy that is seen as a kid that wants to chase after every girl that you see. You can't be that kid. You've got to be the kid who has got a book in his hand. You've got to be the kid who smiles even when you don't feel like. You've got to disarm people with your smile. You've got to disarm people with your personality. They have to feel safe around you. I mean,
there are talks that happen with black kids that just don't happen with white kids. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And
when we talk about a different experience of life, that to me is the one that I've heard the most.
Yeah, I can remember when I was young, I had older siblings and stuff, and they would say, don't get out wherever you are making a bunch of noise. Stay with me. Don't stray off from me. Don't go in any stores by yourself. Don't hang around. And it was even to a point I can remember one of my older sisters saying, hey, don't hang out around that concession area at a basketball game, because I mean they'll think you're stealing something. So stand back a little bit. Just stand back. Don't get right up, because they have a display where you've got candy, and I can remember as clear as day, you got candy, you got Snickers, you got all that stuff right there. Before you pay is a little shelving area, and you could grab something. You could easily grab something, but they told me, you stand back. Don't get that close, because they think you might take something. I know you won't take something, but they think you might take something.
Don't wear baggy clothes.
Yeah.
The clothes you wear.
Yeah. Asha mentioned baggy clothes. That was something else. Don't wear, and for the longest it was with me when we went to this Carter County Free Fair in Ardmore. My mom would tell me, hey, don't wear this red shirt. Don't wear this blue shirt. Don't even then, don't have that hoodie on your head. Take your hoodie off. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, my brother who lives in Durant, he was jogging, and he lives in a neighborhood that's a pretty good neighborhood, pretty affluent, and especially there's some historical homes in that district. So it's a really nice neighborhood, and it's pouring down rain. It's pouring down rain on him. He's jogging. He's got the hoodie on because he prepared for rain. You know, and he told me, he said, you know, man, I had to take my hoodie off. I had to pull my hood down so people could see my face. He said, it's raining all over my face. It's in the morning. It's one of those kind of spring mornings where it's a little chilly and it's raining. He said, but I took my hoodie off so they could see my face because I wanted to disarm them. I didn't want them to feel like I was a threat. And that's the perspective that people in my circle, I can't speak for everyone, but in the people in my circle, we have lived our lives intentionally trying to make us accessible and less threatening. And I don't know that you or Cameron think about living your life to be viewed as less of a threat.
You're not scared of me?
I'm sorry. Sadly, I am not. I'm sorry. but I think that's the burden. That's the weighted vest that I live with.
You would say there definitely are two different experiences.
Yes, there are. And I don't want to paint a picture of every day of my life has been terrible or anything like that. That's not the case. Some of the greatest relationships and some of the greatest moments of my life have been shared with people that are not Black. And I think that's the sadness that I have with everything that goes on, is the relationship that I have with you, the relationship that I have with Cameron, and the relationship that I have with dozens of other people who aren't Black are blessings in my life. And it hurts me that is seen by some people as abnormal or wrong, and maybe even in some cases. But it is unfortunately it's not going to be changed with finger pointing and hateful words. Yeah. Just like our relationship, we couldn't have a relationship if the only thing that I said to you were hateful things, and the only feeling that you got when you were around me was mistrust. So it's like you mentioned. That's a perfect analogy. It's a relationship. That's right. It is a relationship.
Okay, let me ask you about a different two. Let's go to our second two. So we talked about two experiences. I want to talk about the two gaps. Okay, I talk about gaps a lot, guys. In an individual life, there are two gaps. When you turn around from where you are and you see how far you've come, and then you turn around the other way and see how far you have to go. Some people in our own walk with the Lord, you've made a journey and you've come a ways, but you still have a ways to go. And some people, when we're dealing with race, will say, we haven't made any progress. And when you say that, you've lost the debate right away, because there has been progress made, okay? Other people will say, we fixed it and we don't have anything else to do. Well, when you say that, you've totally missed the point and lost the debate as well. So my question to you is, Dion, just tell us about the two gaps. What do you see we've done? How far do you see we've come? Tell us about the progress that you will acknowledge that we've made, which has been a lot.
Yeah.
But then tell us, tell us about the other gap, the gap behind us, and what's the gap ahead of us that we need to get to? And specifically, I want to ask you this. If we're talking about going through the alphabet from A to Z, okay? So we're not at Z, we're not at the finished product yet, but we're not at A either. If we're taking steps along that road to get to the finished product, where do you think we are in the alphabet?
I would say a P.
You think we've made it Porterfield? Not Porterfield. Okay. You think we've made it all the way to P?
I think we've made it to P. I really.
So we're farther there than we are away.
We are. Okay. We are, and I know that if you think about it in the moment, and to answer that question, I think our emotions and events are kind of a pendulum.
Mm.
If right now in this moment we feel like B, we feel like we're the letter B because all of the unrest and the senseless deaths in the street, we feel like a B. When President Obama was elected, then we felt like a Z.
Hmm.
Or maybe not a Z, but maybe a U. Maybe a U. Maybe not Z, but maybe a U. So in moments, in snapshots, we see ourselves on one end of the spectrum or the other. Mm-hmm. The swings, the emotion, the incident. But really, I think it's somewhere around P, because I see that, Rick, 60 years ago, we probably aren't in the same room having this conversation.
That's right.
70 years, we're definitely not in the same room having this conversation.
I can remember, I'm a little bit older than you, but I still remember when football was segregated in the South. Still remember when the Alabamas and the Mississippis in the late 60s, early 70s, they had no African-American players on their team.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And you see that, and there are steps that we've made, and there's a progression that we've made, and the thing that can be lost in moments like this is how much of a progress we've made. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's great, because it's not great, but it's certainly better than it was. It's certainly better than it was, and that should be enough for people to at least be optimistic about the opportunity to make it better for the future. We're not starting at ground zero. We're not starting from scratch. And sure, we have taken at times 5 steps forward and tripped and fell 2 steps back. But it's worth it to keep going. And the fact that I look back and see so much distance from where we started to where we are now gives me hope that we can make up the ground. But it's going to take work, and it's not something that you can do in a day or in a moment. But there have to be conversations. There has to be some changes in the conditions of our hearts. Let's just be honest. And Rick is an awesome pastor, but Rick is not a heart surgeon. There's only one heart surgeon, and that's what we have to have. But in order to get there, we have to open up some doors. You know, he can't. God's not performing heart surgery in the parking lot. We got to let him in the hospital doors. And these conversations, and these opening yourself up, and these being willing to listen and being willing to show compassion when you feel like showing rage, is the way that he gets through the door. That's the only way he gets in. It's a choice. We have to make that choice.
Are there any things you would say specifically that when you look ahead, what do we need to do? Because from my perspective, I don't know that we're at a point where legislation can fix some of the problems we have now.
Right.
Some of the legislative problems have been dealt with in the past. And that's what people would say is, I think, I could be wrong, is we don't see overt external racism, but the internal racism, only God can deal with it. So only the church can speak to it. We need a heart change. We need a heart surgeon. So the things that need to be done, would you say they're more internal heart, or are there still external things? What needs to be done?
There are still some external things.
Okay.
That will, it's almost with me, and this kind of gets into a little bit more of the politics than I wanted to get into this early, but you have to feel like we are on that level trying to help each other, that we're trying to meet each other halfway. The huge divide in this country right now is internally, but it's also in politics. So there has to be some meeting halfway there. I mean, there's got to be somebody that says, hey, we haven't seen eye to eye, but we need to now. Go ahead and let me grab your hand right now, and let's get in this room and let's do that. But the biggest gap, for it to be lasting change, it has to be the condition of your heart. That's the way it's got to be. It's like with any relationship. When Asha is really, really mad at me, I can't speak to her until I show her some level of kindness. She can't hear me tell her how wrong she is. And even when she's happy with me, she can't hear me tell her how wrong she is. But that's why that's such a perfect analogy. We have to be willing to at least put down our guard and our shields for a little bit, just a little bit. Just put it down for just a little bit to hear what I got to say. You don't have to agree with me today, but just give me your eyes and give me your attention so that I feel like you are trying to listen to me. I'm not going to agree with you today, but I am willing to listen to you today. So maybe we can agree later on down the line, but you've got to do that first.
Right.
It's like a pretty girl. You got to compliment her a few times before you can date her.
That's right.
I mean, you can't walk up to a really, really pretty girl unless you're Rick or Dion or Cameron. Then you can walk up to a really pretty girl and get away with it. But most of the guys out there, you got to compliment them. You got to sweet talk them first.
She's not agreeing with any of these statements, by the way. Over here, she's rolling her eyes at us.
She's not agreeing in public, but on the ride home, she was. But you and I use this word a lot, and I'll use it like we have to be willing to disarm each other with kindness.
Yeah. Even in the church, and we'll get to this later,
Mm-hmm.
we sit even in the same building sometimes, but we never really talk about any of this.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
With people that worship God together, love God,
Right.
love each other.
Right.
We never really talk about some of these things.
Yeah.
And we can't truly have the kind of unity and be what we want to be without really dealing, just like a marriage, without really dealing with. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I'll take it a step further. We can't love each other until we know each other fully.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We
Preach.
can't. And there's
Yeah.
not a
Preach,
relationship.
TD Jakes.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
Bishop, let's go.
But I would. But you can't. And you can't say you love someone unless you're willing to get to know them.
Yeah.
Unless you choose to know them. Unless you choose to. It's like, that's why that's such a perfect analogy. If daily I don't go after Asha's heart, if daily I don't seek to understand her better, I can't say that I love her.
Mm.
It's disingenuous. Love is an action.
Yeah.
It's an action. I have to actively seek to love someone else. I have to actively choose to love someone else.
That's so good, man. My goodness. Amen. So you give us a P. You think America, and that's hopeful. America's at a P, and we could theoretically get to Z someday. But we got to work on it.
Absolutely.
But there, to everyone, you would say we've made there's a gap behind us and a gap in front of us. Let's go on to the next two. Okay. I want to talk about the two streams, and I've taught on this repeatedly in the past. I'm talking about the two streams through American history. We have a godly stream and an ungodly stream that flows in the river of the history of America. Many people see the ungodly stream of oppression, slavery, racism, and so forth, and focus on the ungodly stream that happened to the Native American, to the African American, enslaved and the oppressed, and they come to the conclusion that America's bad and it's evil and a bad country. Then you have people that see the godly history of America and the godly stream of people that came over to serve God, make America the city on a hill, a shining light to the world, a nation that's built on the kingdom of God. And what I want to say to us is, just like with individuals and individual families, both of those things are true. And we have to be a both and people, not an either or, because if we get forced to say we're either or, America has a godly heritage there have been prayers of godly Christians for 400 years. And there have been prayers of slaves and the oppressed for 400 years to be in full freedom. Both of those prayers are going to be answered in this hour, I believe, and there's going to be the healing of the oppressed, and the prayers of the oppressed and the prayers of the saints praying to be a city on a hill. They're going to come together in this moment, and then both of those groups are going to unite in an explosion of prayer. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And acknowledge those two prayers, and why we need to see both, not just either or will end up with a distorted view of America.
Right. Rick,
is that out of balance? Is that wrong?
No, I think you're right. And when I heard you saying that, the analogy and the pictures that come to my mind, and I was thinking about you, is the Dallas Cowboys.
Easy.
When
we can talk about some things, but
we're going to talk about Dallas and their glory days.
Okay.
Now, Troy Aikman was a fantastic quarterback, but Troy Aikman threw interceptions. Emmitt Smith fumbled the football. And sometimes if Emmitt Smith didn't fumble the football in week 7, he wouldn't have held on to it as tightly in the Super Bowl. It takes us
Wow, that's
having.
great.
There are some things that unfortunately we have to go through before we can realize our potential.
Hmm.
You can't have the total victory without having the good and the bad.
Mhm.
I wish life is each and every one of us is an example of that.
Hmm.
There are times when things are going really, really well and we think it'll never ever stop, and we just this unbelievable joy. But then there's moments where we stumble and we fall. But it's in those moments that we stumble and fall, we remember the good things and we keep moving forward. If the prayers and the really awesome things that God has done in our lives gives us hope for the things of the future. And the things that have happened that have been struggles and have been failures, they help prepare us to really enjoy the fullness of the things that he's going to do. You can't have one without the other. It for a good movie to be really good, and I would use Notting Hill, but I haven't watched it all, so I don't know. I don't remember all the ups and downs. But for that movie to be really, really good, the main character had to overcome something. They had to keep moving forward at some point, and God is waiting. He gives us. He is so good to us that he gives us hope and he gives us direction, and then he picks us up when we fall, and that's got to be our ultimate goal. We've got to get to God, and this is one of the things that we must overcome to get to God. That's the end game. That's the goal.
That's it.
And that's kind of the way I see it.
Would you agree that the church can't become what God is wanting it to become in this hour unless we deal with this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the basic principles of God is to love everyone. We cannot be the church that God intended if we don't get that right.
And if we don't have, in my view, we don't have all people together worshiping
Absolutely.
God together.
Absolutely.
Not just our attitude, but we literally, to get a reflection of who God is, we need all people together.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with
Absolutely.
that?
I absolutely.
We cannot be in segregated setups anymore.
There are too many things that you bring to the table that I don't.
And vice versa.
That bring God glory. It makes perfect sense in my mind. It's the perfect puzzle. It's like Chris mentioned, the perfect symphony. He made it that way. It was always intended to be that way. And thinking otherwise is silly, to be honest with you. It's silly.
When you look at history,
mm-hmm.
and we say and you hear people say we want to go back to our founding fathers. We want to go back to our founding fathers.
Yeah.
What they're saying, what white Americans are saying when they say that, is they want to go back to the biblical principles or the whatever they're thinking in their mind.
Right.
But when you hear, which those are the good side of American history, but when you hear founding fathers, that's not what you hear.
That is not what I hear. I hear that you want to go back to a place where my voice not even wasn't heard, didn't exist. You want to go back to a place where
and that's not what they want, but that's not what that's not what you hear.
That's not what I hear. I am conditioned to hear things differently. Right. And that's not an excuse. That is a reality. Mm-hmm. Based on my experience as a Black man, based on my experience living in my skin for 40 plus years, I am conditioned to hear certain things differently. Mm-hmm. In a perfect world, I wouldn't. Mm-hmm. We would have no problem if that was the case, because then I could just be who I'm supposed to be. But that's not the reality of it. And what I would say, and the thing that I've said to people is, that doesn't mean that I have a chip on my shoulder. That doesn't mean that I'm saying anything negative about anything else. I'm saying that my experiences have conditioned me to look at things differently than you do. Right. So just understand that that is not a personal attack. That is not an indictment on any person.
Right.
But it's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. I hope that one day my great-grandkids won't have that. They won't have that elephant. They won't have that weighted vest that they walk around with. That they can see this, that they can, when someone says founding fathers, they can see what you see. Mm-hmm. And I think
Is it hard for you? This may be a little bit
Mm-hmm.
too deep, but
No,
I
it's
don't
fine.
know if it is. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is it hard for you to see the good side of American history, or can you still see that there's been a good side of American history? Because I can see the bad side. I can see the bad that's taken place, but I still see the good and the what God wants to do with His destiny for this country, that I still want God to do with this country. But for Him to do that destiny,
Mm-hmm.
we've got to heal this.
Mm-hmm. It is not easy, but it's not hard. It's a choice. I choose to see some of the really good things that have happened in this country. I do.
Right.
I do. I've lived here my entire life.
Right.
I love this country.
Right. I know that.
You
I
know,
know
just
that.
like everyone else, I love this country. And I love what this country could be. And I love what we say we want it to be.
Right.
I love that. But I also acknowledge that that is not the experience that I've had thus far. But it's just like this, Rick. If something really, really good happens for you, I'm going to be really, really happy for you.
Right. I know that.
It doesn't have to happen for me, but at some point I want it to.
Right. Yes.
Some point I want it to happen for
That's
me
right.
too. There's a part of me that wants the good thing that happens to you.
Yeah.
But I love you.
Right.
So when something good happens for you, I'm going to be happy.
Right.
But I just want that for me and mine also.
Absolutely. And I do too.
That's all.
I do too.
I don't want you not to have that. I want you to have it. But it's so good that I want to share it with you also. Right. It's like accepting God. It's the reason why we minister to people, because something really awesome and cool has happened in our heart, and we love you enough that I want you to experience that also.
That's right.
That's, again, it's love.
Mm-hmm.
I choose to love you, and I choose to want good things for you. Even sometimes when somebody doesn't want good things to happen to me, I still don't want bad things to happen to you. Yeah. How can I consider myself a Christian, one who follows God, if that's in my heart? That's why it's so much of a heart transplant. Mm-hmm. But you got to be willing to accept it. You got to be willing to sign off the waiver and say, yeah, you can operate on me.
Yeah, no doubt. Tough question, because I think the history of this is the big deal, because it's generations and generations and centuries of this that has been flowing through the generations. Do you think there's a portion of the Black community or people of color or whatever, for them to believe that America is good, this is going to have to be dealt with and addressed? Is that a tough question, or do you think that's valid?
No, I think that's valid. And
that may sound like a strong statement to a lot of people.
I absolutely agree with
because it hurts me, because I do see the godly history of America. It doesn't hurt me, but I see it, and I'm like, I want us to see the godly destiny that God has for our country, to be a city on a hill, an awakening, and a revival, that we influence the nations with the gospel. Right. We can't do that because a huge section of our populace is hurt by the history of America. And for America to be what it's called to be, we have to deal with this monster. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Because is it possible to believe that it's good when this is still flowing through the stream of America?
Rick, it's just like,
you can see both, but we need to deal with it.
It's just like faith. I mean, I hate to keep going back to that analogy, but it's just like faith. There are some people that you can say, there's some people that will accept God because it moves them immediately. And then there's some people who have to see it move in something physical, something tangible, something they can touch. And that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, there's been so many things that have happened badly in this country to Black America that it's harder for them to believe that. Right. There's no doubt about it.
They can see the good history and the revivals and the wake and even the destiny of America, but it's like, got this big hole here that we've got to deal with for me to get fully.
Right. I don't know that I'll ever. And the scary part, the thing that I struggle with this time is there's a feeling of hopelessness that you won't ever feel that. And that's scary, because a lot of what's going on, it's not being heard, but it's also an absence of hope. I feel like Obama got in office, things are going to get better, and then it just feels like it was a mirage. It was I throw you this this crumb to pacify you. You're starving, but I'm gonna give you just this little bite, just to keep you moving. And that's kind of what it feels like. But it is difficult. I can't say that I blame anyone that would feel that way. I don't. My experience, while there have been challenges in my life and there have been numerous incidents that I could account, has not been as bad as others. So I can't speak for someone who has dealt with it daily in some cases. And I do believe that there are still places in this country where you can deal with that daily, where you don't get to breathe ever, where you don't get to exhale. And for those people, I could see why that's the case. I believe because my faith tells me to love people regardless. That's my choice. But I can't make everyone's choice for them. I understand that, and I acknowledge that.
I think we both want America to fulfill its destiny.
Absolutely.
It's God-called destiny. For America to fulfill its destiny, in my heart, this is probably a key. We have got to deal with this for us to be who God wants us to be. That's the bottom line.
We won't be whole until it happens.
won't be whole until this. We've got to deal with this too. Everyone wants America to return to greatness, or whatever it is, how they would phrase that. A key to us returning to those principles that people of faith want us return to, we have to deal with this.
Right. And on some level, we have to acknowledge that we have never been there. It's never been great. It's never been great for people that look like me. There's no way that anyone who is open-minded
again doesn't fit.
It doesn't. It has never been great. I want it to be great at some point. I want to get to XYZ at some point. Then it'll be great. Then everyone can enjoy it. The thing that is lost on people at times, and I just feel like, I want it to be great for all of us.
That's right. Absolutely.
Just because I don't want to be happy and then you're miserable. That does nothing. We get no better if the board is flipped in such a way that it's favored me so much that I'm enjoying the life that you deserve also. I don't want that. I don't want anything. I want the same thing from my family that you want for yours. I want all of us to have it. I want all of us to enjoy it. It has to be that way. That's the only way. Yeah. That's the only way. You hear that analogy all the time about this country is a team and all that stuff. Everybody on your team has to be winning. Right now, we got one team and we got another team, and this team gets to win, this team gets to lose. How is that fun if you have to lose every day? How is that fun? How is that enjoyable? I love you enough that I want you to win also. That's what it comes down to. I love you enough that I want the really, really awesome things that I want to happen in my life. I want them for you also. That's where we have got to get. That's the bottom line. We can talk about we can talk about bills, we can talk about laws, we can talk about everything. But until you want me to have the same life and you want me to be just as happy as I am, then we get nowhere. If I have a really nice car, I want you to have a really nice car too. It's not about the car, but it's about us enjoying this thing together. Yeah. It's funner when we enjoy each other together. Right. Yeah. How many times have you went to a place and you talk to somebody and they are miserable? Yeah. It sucks the joy out of you.
It just sucks.
You can't be happy. I can't be happy until Asha's happy. Asha can't be happy until Braden's happy. Braden can't be happy until Amira's happy. Amira can't be happy until Dion's happy. It's that concept. We all have to be happy. We all have to want, we have to seek happiness for us all, not just for one of us, not just for some of us. And that's what it's about to me. And if you have something, if there's something else in your heart besides that, then you're wrong. I'm sorry, but you are wrong. If you're okay with living on this hill while everyone else is burning, that's not okay. That's not God. It's not.
right. Man, I love you. Wow, my goodness, that was awesome. Let me give you another two.
Okay.
And I think this will be a simple one, be a little
Okay.
softball because here it is out there.
Okay.
Talk about the two economic realities. We
Mhm.
talked about the two experiences, two gaps. Talked about the two streams. Talk about the two economic realities. What's difference economically as far as opportunity and different things? Just some basics. So, how is it different economically for a person of color?
One of the things that I love about Chris is that he talks about trust so much,
Mhm.
and that's what money is. When I go in to get a loan, the bank has to say, I trust that you're going to pay this back.
Mm.
I trust that you're a man of your word. When I go in for a job interview, they have to say, I trust that you're going to do this job well.
Mm.
And the lack of trust is what creates this economic imbalance and disparity.
Wow.
That's what it comes down to. To me, it's that simple.
Mm. It's just an issue of trust.
It's an issue of trust.
Would you say there's a difference in a white person and a black person going to get a loan or going
Absolutely
and applying
is.
for a job? What's different about it?
Absolutely it is. You don't trust that you may not trust that I pay you back, but even if you don't trust that Cameron pays you back, Cameron's uncle may pay you back.
Hmm.
I trust that you come from, that somebody in your family has a little bit of money. I trust that. I don't believe that anybody that looks like you has any money. So there's a trust in that. I mean, it really is that simple. And to a lesser degree, I trust that somebody in Cameron's family may have influence, and this may benefit me later. Whereas somebody that looks like me, I don't believe that anybody in your family is going to have influence, and that I'm going to be able to benefit from later. So there's layers to this thing.
Yeah. How would you address, and it goes a little bit back to the systemic issue, when they say there's opportunity, the opportunities are equal, they're there, go make it.
Mm-hmm.
It's MLK's line's what's coming to my mind. Don't tell a man to pick him up by his bootstraps when he doesn't have any boots. Explain that dimension. Okay.
I would love.
Can you talk long enough for me to take a bathroom break?
Sure.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I would love for someone to say that. I would love for it to be accurate that no matter who you are, you can. And don't get me wrong. I don't believe in putting limitations on anyone, but I do know that anyone who has had some success, lasting success, has got some assistance, some help from someone at some point. And especially if you've done anything significant, there's been at some point someone has helped you along the way. So and don't get me wrong, my wife is one of the hardest working people I've ever met. Driven, determined, all that. And there's been times where she hasn't gotten a break when she could have. But there have been a few times where she has, and those little things that have happened, not huge things, but those small things that have happened have propelled her forward. So it's not just about the absence of break. Well, it is about the absence of breaks. I mean, there's not any of us. There's not anybody that you can find that didn't have someone help them along the way. And that's why we're here. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to help each other, at least in my opinion. There shouldn't be a situation where I don't want to see you do well. I mean, it doesn't need to be, I don't know that it's you say that you depend on anyone, but I think we've all had to have help at some point. I really was done with this, but now Rick is gone. So, Cameron, you want to turn into the moderator?
Sure. So when Martin Luther King said that, what comes to my mind is that there was after the Jim Crow laws were abolished, white people kind of just expected African Americans in America to just kind of run this marathon that they have not been equipped for, that they weren't ready.
Right.
So kind of just, what would you think about that?
Well, Cameron, here's what I would say. It's really, really, perfect example I can give is me playing the guitar. Is if someone hands me the guitar, then there's no way that I would learn the little bit that I've learned about it. There had to be some tutorials along there somewhere. So it's unrealistic for anyone to say that anybody has gotten anywhere without some level of help, assistance, even if it's just being able to learn, even if it's being able to have access to the right college, the right professor. It's unrealistic to say, okay, well, you've got just as good a chance as anybody else when we know that's not true. We know that the schools are different. We know that school districts are different. We know that the level of education is different depending on where you live. We know that access to a library, for crying out loud, is different depending on your zip code. So it until those things are changed, until those things are different, then there's none of us that just do anything on our own. It does not happen. I think the idea that it takes some assistance along the way for all of us.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
Sorry about that, guys out there. Let me hit the next one. Okay? It's just all wonderful stuff. Getting texts, man. This is good stuff from people. Talk about home to home, the difference in home life. We have to look at beyond the economic opportunity issues that affect home life. We have to look at the history there.
Yeah.
I remember hearing Jake's talk about one time, when you look at the history on plantations where they ripped families apart, generation after generation, they did not allow families to develop. Generation after generation, they ripped them apart. I remember, and I don't know if I should share this story. I hope it's not too sensitive, but the reality of it helps understand the dynamic that's here, guys, generationally. When I was ministering or counseling someone years ago, they were talking to me as an African-American lady, and her granddad or great-grandfather was actually used as a breeder who would go from two different, they would take him and use him to breed with the women on the plantations to have offspring with the slaves. Now, when that is the history that you're dealing with, the stain and the mark and the reality that leaves, and we understand from a biblical point of view, guys, about generational things that flow generationally through the bloodline, the reality of that and the effects that has. So when we look at the family structure, and you will hear statistics about fatherlessness and all those things, and it's not that you don't realize that that's not true, that we need fathers in the home. The flow that's there in the home, talk about the difference in family and why, because there hasn't been generation after generation after generation of family structured units.
Right.
Is that a hard question? Is that too? Did I ask it wrong? I feel bad about that one.
No.
Okay.
I think it's okay. Now, if I answer it wrong, then it's my fault.
Okay.
But the thing about it, one of the things that I always enjoyed about going to some of my white friends' house when I was in school is fathers and grandfathers, and the knowledge that is kind of passed on from, and really not even just the knowledge, skills. If oftentimes sons take over their father's businesses, and that sort of pride and that sort of success does something to your identity. It's like we talked about several months ago. It's when you don't have a father in the house, there's an identity issue, and it's hard for Black families to be what they should be when there's a lack of identity. And that comes from the father in a lot of situations. But not only that, the Black fathers that are home, they go out and sometimes they never come back.
Amen.
That's the thing that I think has wounded us more than anything else. It's easy to say, well, there's not a lot of Black fathers in the home.
Yeah.
Why are there not a lot of Black fathers in the home? Because we're incarcerated at a much higher rate for crimes that when our white counterparts commit, they don't go to jail, but we do and serve longer sentences. When we come out, we can't get a job. We feel lousy about ourselves. The family dynamic gets shifted and destroyed for several different reasons. But more recently, this man went out and he didn't come back home. I mean, just think about that. If it it is difficult to wrap your mind around the fact that when you leave, when I leave to go get milk, when I leave to go to work, that I may not come home, and how that changes Braden, how that changes my son. So now the voice, the guy that's supposed to be at home to give you the talk, to keep you safe, he's not.
Yeah.
So then I never got that talk. So while I'm not doing anything wrong, I haven't done things that could help disarm this white officer. It's not my fault, but I was never taught that, because you took him away. You took the guy that's supposed to teach me that. You took him away. So it's easy to say that black men aren't and black men are like any other man.
Right. That's right.
There are some of us that are lousy parents and don't come home because we're doing foolish stuff. But a lot of times, more times than we care to acknowledge, we intend to come home, but we don't get the opportunity to. And that's the thing that I think we miss. It's easy to throw that statistic
That's
up.
right.
It really is. It's easy to say that whatever the number is now, 45% of black homes are single parent households. It's easy to say that, but who's digging deeply into the reason why that's the case?
I feel like I would really ask Lord, give me clarity. Let me say it clearly so that it's not improperly.
Yeah.
I feel like I stumbled over. My point in setting you up for that one was that there's two battles there. There's a historical battle flowing through the way things were done in the past, and the treatment of the past. And there's societal battles both. There's a double whammy on the situation that I feel like I did. I'm sorry, I did a poor job of saying that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and to speak to that a little bit, like you mentioned with black slaves being breeders, sometimes white America sees us as they still see us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, let me say it for you, just a sexual
breeders.
Predator or
yes,
whatever.
exactly, exactly.
I know you've got hesitant to say that. Yeah,
thank you.
It just dehumanized.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. I don't know if you guys heard Asha, but she said dehumanized, and that's exactly the word.
Because that's what historically it dehumanized both the man and the woman involved in all of that situation.
Let me ask you this.
Unless, from a biblical Christian perspective, and we're a church group, those things flow, whether you're white, red, yellow, purple, green. All of those things flow through the bloodlines until we break that stuff off. And until we dive in and deal with this stuff, it's flowing in the bloodlines. Okay, God, that's why we have to bring this up. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, I do. And you said it much better than I did.
No, go. I'm gonna get out of your way.
No. And we talk about this. We talk about the family, but how does that make a son feel when he knows that his father is viewed that way? How does that make a daughter feel when she knows that her father is viewed that way? Or a wife when her husband's viewed that way? Would that not make you behave differently? Would that not make you feel less than?
Right.
I mean, there's walls and there's barriers to this thing. And I hope people understand that I'm not blaming you for that, but I'm telling you that I carry those with me. People that look like me carry those things with me.
You don't, I don't want to put words in. I don't think you want us to feel guilt or shame. You just want us to recognize. You just want us to understand. And
yes. I just want you to understand that this is my struggle. And I am saying, and here's the remarkable thing about most black people is they deal with that and they still love you. And not only that, they still want you to love them.
Right.
They still want you to love them. I still want you to love me. I still want Cameron to love me. I still want everybody out there to love me. I've dealt with this stuff. And I could blame you, but I choose not. But I choose to love you, and I just want you to love me too. You know, I think Jalen Rose said it best. I wish America loved black people as much as they love black culture.
Yes.
But I just want you to love me. Right. I don't even care if you love black culture that much. I just want you to love me. I just want you to love me. Yeah. I want to be your friend. Man, I want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone took the relationships that I have with Cameron and Rick away, it would wound me deeply because I love you and I want to be able to love you.
Right.
I want to be in that room. I don't want to feel like an outsider.
And I know Cameron would echo this. I want it without all of this other baggage on you.
Right.
Right.
So I can be. So I can
full
be
you.
So I can be the full me.
That's right.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Let me throw another 2 out at you.
Sure.
Okay. This is going to be the elephant in the room. We're going to hit it briefly. Okay. Let's see how we roll with this. The monster in our society is politics, and we almost have. Guys, help me. I'm going to look at the church, not Dion, as we say this, guys. We almost have 2 different versions of Jesus. Okay. We have a white conservative gun-carrying Jesus, and we have a black liberal Jesus. Neither one of those is who Jesus is. We co-opt Jesus and we form him in a political image, and Jesus is way above all of that stuff. And what the church has to do, red, yellow, black, and white, and I'm going to tee Dion up and let him go, we have to step beyond the political sphere of all of this and rise to the level of God in the heavenlies. God, what's your image? What's your picture? We haven't displayed who Jesus is because we portray him as white conservative or black liberal or whatever. That Jesus is neither one of those. He's Jesus. He's above all of that. How would you deal? I'm trying to figure out how to ask you this because I'll give you this example to set this up. 2 of my favorite men out there, maybe my favorites, are T.D. Jakes and Dutch Shields. On a scale of 1 to 10, they're a 12 to me. They're monsters, and many things you hear me share, I've gleaned from them through the years. They're giants. Dutch Sheets will say, if you can belong to a political party that votes for the slaughtering of millions of babies, get out of that party because of his view of abortion. T.D. Jakes will say, if you belong to a political party, I heard him say in an interview recently, if you belong to a political party who doesn't have a worldview that includes all of America, get out of that party. Well, obviously they're talking about opposite parties. And so one of the, how do we deal with that reality and explain why you, because of your experience and your view of life, and this tough one, I know politics is touchy, and we're going to touch on it. This is the monster though.
Yeah.
The church has almost been unable to be the church because we've taken on a political mantra of and our purpose is not going to be fulfilled through politics. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely.
We're going to have to become the people of God and be the voice for God, not the voice for a party. We should not be led by political leaders. Right. So anyway, I'm going into dangerous territory, but tell me your experience or your view. Just jump into that area however you want.
Okay. So my perspective is that, how do I word this?
We'll continue this next week.
Yeah. No, I think at times, I think we as people have used politics as a measure to divide us. Mm-hmm. And because of that, each party, I believe, runs to an issue and they grab this issue so they can say, well, this is where I stand on. And some people on the other side, I believe they could stand for the same things. Mm-hmm. But there are so many issues and so many barricades that have been put up between the parties that it's hard for us to get in the same room so we could agree on something. Mm-hmm. I told you in Cameron this Tuesday, I wish we had no political parties. Mm-hmm. I really do, because it's just a measure of division. Mm-hmm. It really is. There are really good people who wear red ties. There are really good people who wear blue ties.
And you're fully aware of where you live. That in Oklahoma, this is so red they don't come. Nobody comes to visit us.
It's going to be red ties all the time.
You understand the world you live in.
Absolutely, I do. And I think as far as a black man, that it is difficult for me to embrace a certain party because I believe that they don't speak to the things that affect me daily. And I don't mean that through policy. I mean, when they speak to me, I don't feel like they are concerned with the things that that affect me.
Mhm.
And that is hurtful. I'd rather not be pushed in a corner to say that I am Democrat or Republican. I would really rather not, because that's a label, and I don't want to be like, I don't want you to think that I am 100% this or 100% that.
Right.
And unfortunately, politics has done that.
Mhm.
And that's why I despise. But having said that, there are things that are said by one party or another that resonate differently. With me.
Mhm.
And that's how I would say it. And I danced around it a little bit
Yeah.
to get to get to the end. But that is my struggle with politics, is in the end, I don't know that this particular party cares about me.
Mhm.
I don't feel that by some of the things that they say, and some of the policies that are put in place.
Mhm.
I would like to.
Mhm.
I really would. I would like to believe that everyone has the best intentions. That's just anyone.
Mhm.
I want to believe that, but unfortunately, there is a division and there is a split between people that look like me and a political party, a certain political party.
Mhm.
And that's
When you hear these are, I think this is not the first time Dion and I have had discussions
Yeah.
like this. So
Yeah.
this situation in our country did not suddenly make us talk about this. So
Mhm.
these are conversations that we've had. And when you see, one of the things I think I've heard you say, when you hear news
Mhm.
or when you watch things by politicians, what
Yeah.
they say,
right.
you hear that differently than I do.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And by the way, we started talking about politics. I don't know if you saw that or not. We had a power surge or a power. Well, I thought we suddenly almost lost our power. So I don't know what's going on with that.
I don't like that I am conditioned the way that I am.
Mm-hmm.
Let me start by saying that I would rather just hear something and take it at face value. But the skin that I live in tells me that certain rhetoric and certain terms are triggers for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm smart enough to recognize those. Unfortunately, I believe that some people in positions of power are smart enough to recognize those too, and they use those. That's what I don't like. And that's why it feels like there's a divide. And that's why I feel like you are saying words to elicit a reaction out of me,
Mm-hmm.
and to elicit certain feelings for me.
Don't you think though that they would want to be smart enough to not do that? Let me throw this out there too.
Now
you can answer both of them.
Yes.
Okay. when I've heard you say that when there were you hear comments,
mm-hmm.
words or whatever,
mm-hmm.
and you've said in conversations past that sounded like something I heard when I was at so-and-so town
mm-hmm.
when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so the experiences you had make
Absolutely.
you go, that the way he said that
yes.
sounded exactly what I
that's
was.
The way I hear
that's
it.
The way you
that's
explain
the way
that.
That's
explain
that.
that.
Okay, so when you hear people talk about certain places in the world and certain communities as crap holes,
mm-hmm.
those are similar to what I heard when I was young, when we went to play at
you don't
at
have to
schools.
name you don't have to name
I won't name
right.
towns, but at certain places where they weren't particularly fond of people who looked like me playing
right.
basketball on their court. And they said those things to me on the way to the locker room. They said those things to me when I took the ball out of bounds and the crowd is right behind me. And they said those things to me when I'm got my jacket and my hood over.
And it wasn't, you're not good at basketball.
It was not, you're not good at
right.
basketball. It was,
right.
making comparisons between me and animals at zoos.
Right.
Um,
You can say it.
Say
It's a
it.
safe
Yeah.
place, man.
use the words porch monkeys,
Right.
SOBs,
Right.
pieces of
Mhm.
feces. Those things were said to me.
Mhm.
Those things were said to me as a 16-year-old high school basketball player.
Mhm.
And so when I hear people say those things, when speaking about people who look like me,
When you hear
That's-
people say SOB,
yeah,
it triggers.
yeah. When you say SOB and you're talking about people who look like me,
Mhm.
that's what I hear.
Right. And I'm sorry,
And-
I didn't say
and-
that correct. That's right.
No, and then I can't believe that you care about me any more than those people in that town did.
Mhm.
I can't believe that.
Mhm.
It's the same thing.
Mhm.
And I wish that I really wish that I didn't. I really wish that didn't resonate with me like that.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants that. Nobody wants to feel like, nobody wants to be that triggered by words. I don't.
Right.
No, nobody, because I give up a piece of who I am to that. Every time somebody says something like that, I give up a piece of who I am.
Mhm.
That steals a little bit of the joy and happiness that I could have had. That moment, it takes that away, and I don't want to give that to anybody.
Right.
I don't want to feel that way.
Mm.
But I also can't unhear that.
Right.
And
That's
I
right.
can't pretend that doesn't resonate with me that way. I
Mhm.
can't pretend that that's not how I'm affected when I hear that.
Right.
I can't.
That's right. I'm with you. You know, I've said for years and years and years and years that justice and righteousness are the foundations of God's throne when I'm talking about the political dimensions in our country. And you can tell me if you agree with this. And that we get put in a box when we have some people that lean toward righteousness tend to be a little more Republican,
Mhm.
and people that lean towards justice tend to be a little more Democrat. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that?
Yeah.
And so what happens is we have an issue on this side like abortion, and that tends to be more of a holiness righteousness issue, and it
Mhm.
becomes the issue of issues. And on this side you have the issue of race, and it tends to be taken on by the other party. And so what we get put in a box of is we get forced to choose between abortion or race,
Right.
abortion and race. And I want to say that we should never be put in a position where we're forced to choose between those two things, that those two things are not separated in God's economy and God's justice system. In heaven, righteousness and justice are on the same side of the aisle. I don't know how righteous issues and justice issues got put on. What we have to do is we have to get to a point where the church rises up enough that the issues of God are put together. And it's the secret to winning every election in history, in my opinion, is get righteousness and justice to marry righteousness and justice.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be forced to choose between the unborn and life after you're born and how life is done after you're born.
Absolutely.
So here we are in this situation, and we're trying to work out the details. And so when you go to the ballot box,
Mhm.
why and abortion would be a dominant issue for me. We've talked about that many
Yeah,
times,
absolutely.
and how it's a stereotypical. I'm a
Yeah.
white minister and all that in Oklahoma, and abortion is a prominent issue for me.
Right.
And one of the reasons I said this to Dion today or the other day, I can't remember, we've had so many talks,
Yeah.
that one of the when I go to the poll, I don't have to vote as much for, if I vote for pro-life, I'm sacrificing any hope of change in my life in reality. So there's a sacrifice in how would you
It
agree
is.
with that?
It
So talk
absolutely
to
is.
that.
It absolutely is. I mean, it's, and I think Asha may have mentioned this earlier, but it gets back to the policies on the way that black males are incarcerated longer for crimes that in certain places. I mean, it's a whole tangled web, but you're absolutely right. I can't agree with you on this issues because there's so many of these issues that affect me daily that I feel like I have to try to address. You know, I can't. I'm trying to think of an analogy or a picture in my mind.
And you're pro-life. You
Yes.
believe in that,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
I know that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, but I don't get to vote that because I've got to vote for policies that literally can keep me alive.
Mhm.
I mean, can keep my son alive. I have to vote for those things so that I feel better about him leaving me one day to go to school or go to work or go to college or whatever. I mean, and you hit it right on the head. We shouldn't have to choose.
Right.
We
That's
shouldn't
right.
have to choose. I shouldn't have to choose between something that I believe strongly and my safety.
It's a both and.
Yeah,
He's a both
Absolutely.
and Jesus.
absolutely.
And that was the bottom line of where we started. It should not be an either or in any
Absolutely.
of these dimensions. It's
Absolutely.
a both. We've got to get to a point where we're a both and people with a both and God.
Absolutely.
And we've got to rise up higher, and we've got to force the issue by our preaching and proclaiming. We've got to make politicians line up. We can't have politicians directing what we're doing. We've got to start directing what they're doing.
Exactly.
Do you agree with that?
It's absolutely. We have politicians can't be our moral authority.
That's right.
Mm.
Yeah. Preach.
They can't be our moral authority.
Preach.
They
Yeah.
can't be our compass,
That's
our
right.
moral compass. They
Thank
can't
you.
lead us in the. We've got to. God's people
That's right.
have to lead.
We've got
That's-
to go up to God and quit going to them as
Exactly.
our answers or
Yeah,
our
it's just-
insights.
It's-
Stop going to political pundits to tell you what to think.
Exactly.
Let's go to God and what He
Exactly.
says about these issues.
Exactly. I could not agree more.
I mean, let me give you the last one because this one breaks my heart, and I appreciate you guys listening. I think this is great, Dion. Man, it's good stuff. It's been a little bit longer than I thought, but we'll
Yeah.
wrap it up with this.
Okay.
My heartbreaking one is we have two experiences. We have two gaps. We've got two streams, two economic setups. We've got two family situations. We've got two parties. But the hardest one of all is we've got two churches.
Yep.
And that just breaks my heart that in 2020, here we sit and predominantly still as segregated an hour as in the world. We were both coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we would say that one of the places in our society where we get this better than just about anywhere else is sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is better in sports than it is just about anywhere else.
Absolutely
And when I
is.
look at church, we haven't got it right at all. Help us understand what we need to do. And I will say this as a white pastor, former pastor, being a pastor, minister, one of the things, correct me if I'm wrong, that we have to do if we want people of color, minorities, people from the Black community to be a part of what we're doing, they have to see us fight for them.
Absolutely.
They have to see us fighting and speaking for them and what's going on with them,
That's
or
right.
they don't believe that we care about them.
That's right.
So talk about this issue. That help me. What do we need to do to get the church to be the church? Because we've got to lead this thing.
Well, you
Said it.
you hit it exactly right on the head. When you think about Black churches, they have always been a safe place for Black people where and it's just what you hit on. When I go to church in the Black churches I've been to, I know when I walk in that everyone is with me, that they'll go to battle for me, that they'll protect me, that they want me there. And that's if I know that you're with me, if you show up at some point in some way, if you show up, there have been times when I have been wrestling with any and everything, and I've called you, and you have always answered. You've always taken my phone call. So I know you care. It's and that's all. That's the only barrier. I just have to know that when I come to your church, that you want me there and you care. That we're pulling on the same rope. That we're believing in the same God. That's all. It sounds. I wish it were more complicated.
It sounds
I really
a little bit
do.
like what I heard Jake say recently during all this, and somebody said, "What do you want?" Or something like that. And he said, "We want to be your friend.
Yeah.
We want to be your friends.
Yeah.
We don't want to be a display on your stage, and we don't want to be another ceremony. We don't want to be a stat.
Exactly.
We want to be your friends."
Yeah.
I may be paraphrasing that. I'm sorry. I
Right.
got that wrong, but
No, absolutely. When I just want to know that you're with me. I don't mean that I want you to take a bullet for me. That doesn't mean that I want you to beat up somebody.
doesn't mean we have to totally agree with you
Exactly.
or vote the same way.
Exactly.
As long as you know we truly care. You can respect the fact that we come down in a different place.
I want to know that you believe your God loves me as much as he loves you. That's what I want to know.
Right.
If you think that I am the same in God's eyes,
Mhm.
that's it. If I know that, we can work everything else out. We can figure everything else out.
Mm.
If I know you love me, we can figure everything else out.
Right.
But
it has to be shown
it through action.
through action.
And again, I say love is a verb.
Right.
You know, it's not just hang it out. It's an action verb. It's not even a Lincoln verb. It's an action verb. But you got to do it. You got to show it. It's got to be done through action. You know, I got
Dropping a little grammar knowledge on
yeah.
everybody.
Well, I did. Went to the greatest university ever. but it has to be demonstrated.
Mm. How do we get to where the versions of Jesus, we get beyond that, where it's not and I use, these are stereotypical terms, a white conservative gun carrying Jesus and a liberal compassionate Jesus and black Jesus. How do we get beyond the stereotype cliche caricature just to get up to Jesus where he's just Jesus and we're his people?
Oh man.
What are the barriers in the black and white church or Native American or Hispanic? And I wish we had more of these. It's trust. The barrier is trust to get together.
It's trust. I got to know that you got my best intentions. I got to know that when I come through that door, you want me there. I got to be able to trust you. It really is. It's trust and love, and you can't trust without love, and you don't really love unless you trust. I mean, it's those things. It really. I wish I had a lengthy, poetic way of saying it, but it really is just those two things.
Yeah.
You got to love me, and I got to trust that you love me, and you got to be willing to do the same with me.
Right.
You know, it really is that simple.
Yeah. And to a degree, that has to be earned a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, through your actions.
And you agree that the church is the answer. We don't. You've heard me say this a million times. At our core, we have a sin problem. Not a legislative education problem.
We have gone through a myriad of civil rights bills and acts and passed this and did that and tried this reform and tried that reform. And how about we let God have a chance? How about all of us? Not just this group or this group, not just red ties, blue ties, not just black guys, white women. How about we all give God a try?
Right.
How about we turn something over to him? Because we are still creatures who want to control things. We have controlled this thing for 400 years, and look where it's got us. P, when we should have been Z,
right.
Centuries ago, because we want to control it. We want to say that we did it. My bill passed this. This Civil Rights Act, I wrote that. That's why we have harmony.
Man.
We can't do it. You know, we can't even fix a car that lasts longer than 3 years. How are we going to fix this?
Right.
I mean, but again, it has to be a decision. We have to let him in. We have to open the door and let him in. That's the part that we can do through understanding, through kindness, through compassion, through listening, through conversation, through coming to the table with the right intentions. We can do that part. And if you do that part, if you open up your heart, then we have to believe that God will do it. And I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe he wants to do that. One of the best things that you taught me, and you have preached into me from the moment that I got here, is Dion, when things start stirring up in your life, when things start stirring up in the world, it's because God is bringing it up so he can heal it. He's bringing it up so he can heal it. You know, you start feeling symptoms so you can go to the doctor and get healed. We feel symptoms. This country is symptomatic. We need healing. It really is that simple to me.
Amen.
It's
Preach.
Oh man, it's that simple.
It's awesome what you're saying.
It's hard to. I'm not saying it's easy, and it's going to be hard to do, but it's why we're where we're at. One of the things I talked about in the devotional a few weeks ago was you're exactly where you're supposed to be. We are exactly where we're supposed to be. This is our window that you talked about, the window for him to act. It's now. You have windows in your career where you have to strike. There are windows in your personal life where you have to strike. This is a window for the world. Right. He made us stay home. He told us, sit, be still for a little while. And then he let something bubble up so he can heal it. When you're sick, do you not need rest? Do you not need to stay at home? Otherwise, you feel more symptomatic, and then you have to go to the doctor. In my mind, it's so clear. Not easy, but it's clear. We have to be willing to turn it over. We can't fix this. That's right. We can throw as much money as we want to at this problem.
Politics can't fix this.
It'll help. It'll help. You can throw a lot of money in Black communities, and it will help with school, and that will help. That is necessary. But I hope you do it because God is moving your heart to do so. See, that's still God. If I donate money, that's still God. That's not my money. That's his money. He's saying, do this. So that's still God. If I decide not to act, if I decide to show a little bit of compassion, that's God. That's him changing my heart. That's me opening up and giving him the opportunity to change my heart. That's what we have to have. We keep trying to find every other reason except the reason. And you can't get right in any part of your life without God. That's right. So what makes us think that we can get something right in somebody else's heart without God? You can't even fix your own heart. I can't even fix my own toilet if it messes up. How am I going to fix this?
Right. That's right. Man, I'm going to say that's a great place to it was awesome, bro. And for the first time, I think I had someone call me today, and their wife works for a major corporation in the nation. And they were listening into a conference call where this stuff was being addressed. It's being addressed nationally in a way that it's never been before, right? Including this.
Absolutely.
Hopefully thousands of these conversations are taking place. And they said on the conference call of this major corporation that was addressing race, diversity, and all of the issues, people were openly saying, I'm turning to my faith to work my way through this. I don't know that we've ever been at this kind of a moment. Maybe, I don't know, but I don't remember it. Not in our lifetimes. I don't know. We've never been at this place where people are willing to turn to the church and to faith to look for, how do we deal with this? What do we do? Right. Which is why we're doing this. And it's incumbent upon the church to rise to the occasion and to be present. And what that means to me is, as we talked about earlier, when MLK said, riots are the voice of the unheard, or protests are the voice of the unheard. I'm sorry if I'm misquoting that, but so the solution is that they be heard. And it's imperative that we listen and just listen for a while. So I want to end it with that because it was just incredible. And let's pray. Yeah. Is that all right? Yeah. And if anybody wants to hang around, and we'll call it a meeting, and it went a little bit longer than we thought, but it was worth it. I'm just going to say it was worth the sharing and the things that got shared. Thank you for hanging with us and being here. And if any of you want to hang around and discuss or have comments or things to add, I'm going to pray. I think I talked to Cameron and even Osh about possibly sharing a few thoughts. They're going to start off our discussion. I'm sure there's several things that maybe you have that you would add to this, and we're willing to sit here and talk, or that you have questions. I'm going to end this portion. I'm just going to pray, because what you ended there with, we have to turn to God. Would you just pray for our nation and pray for the church to be the church, just whatever God leads you to pray. Yeah.